Hi, everybody. Today we are talking about how to hit the reset button on caregiving. Are you a caregiver who was just swept into helping loved ones and now you're overwhelmed? You feel like there is so much to do and you can't possibly keep up. You're trying to manage your life and someone else's life. If so, know that you are not alone. During this video, I will share signs that it's time to hit that reset button on caregiving by intervening or through intervention. And I'll explain what this means in a moment, and the steps you can take and the conversations that you can initiate to see what the person on the other side, that care receiver, that patient, is thinking about what they expect you to do. Because caregiving, while many times it feels like this one-way interaction, it's not that way and it shouldn't be that way. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker with more than 20 years of working in the healthcare industry, helping older adults, disabled persons, and caregivers and patients of all ages. Please click below to like this video and to follow my YouTube channel. Also, I'd appreciate it if you would comment, even if it's only to say thanks for the video, as this helps other people seeking similar information find my channel. You can also go over to my website. It's PamelaDWilson.com. The link is below. There's a lot of free education there. There's a way to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me if you have questions that the content on my website or in these videos don't answer. So let's start about being really direct. I want to provide some context for this video. For caregivers, providing care, the work, it's a major, major source of stress. It's not like all of us don't have a difficult enough time managing what daily life throws at us in work, in our family, in our personal lives, in our friendships, in our relationships. So the challenges to caregiving arise when we stack more caregiving responsibilities on there and we add more people to the mix, which happens when you start to interact with the healthcare system and healthcare providers. So instead of caregiving getting easier or smaller in scope, more challenges arise. Time lengthens. The complexity and the difficulty of the issues that you deal with that can be health related become more difficult. So being totally honest, caregiving is work, no matter how much you want to do it, no matter how much you like it. And getting in over your head, that can be a miserable feeling. It can result in exhaustion, frustration, health problems for the caregiver. So all of this means that it's perfectly okay to realize it is time to hit the reset button and intervene to change the path of the current situation. So in simple terms, intervening means you're going to redirect that train that has left the station and that's been traveling for however long you've been a caregiver. Why is this so hard? It's because family caregivers most of the time are responding and reacting to the problems of other people that they care for who didn't get ahead of their health issues from a health, from a financial, or from a legal perspective. And many times it's because they didn't know how important this was. So what this means is that healthy adults of all ages and aging loved ones with health problems today, many didn't know how to plan. They didn't know what to look for. They didn't know what questions to ask. They didn't know what problems to anticipate. Some people, maybe they knew and they procrastinated, or they refused to make plans for their health and well-being because they weren't sure how to do that, or because it just seemed like it took too much work. And let's be honest, planning for healthcare needs, not fun. It may be a very unpleasant activity. It can take time. It can take a lot of effort, but it's necessary. And if you do it, you can have a more peaceful life instead of this constantly responding and reacting and all this commotion and crisis and emotional upset and everything that caregivers experience when they are continually working in crisis mode. So, in all fairness, this lack of planning and responding to ongoing emergencies happens all the time until you hit the reset button and find your way here to my channel or some other source of information that gives you information about health and planning for your health so that you can manage through these unexpected problems. So let's talk about the idea of responding and reacting and intervening. So the first question to ask yourself is, why not get ahead of issues instead of continually reacting or running behind? It's that old saying of the tail wagging the dog, or the dog wagging the tail. Which end would you rather be on? Would you rather be leading or running behind constantly? So the difficulty to doing this is that family caregivers are not trained in what I call intervention. You're not trained in knowing what's going to happen or seeing what's going to happen and then taking a step back and saying, oh, if this might happen, these are the things that I should do, or these are the things that we should be looking at. There's not a lot of training for that, except here on my YouTube channel and on my website and some other websites. So how can you, as a caregiver, intervene in this care situation that you find yourself and help your loved one get on board with intervening so that it's a combined effort instead of this one-way street from the caregiver over here to the care receiver over here? Opposite ends of the story, right? Usually doesn't work very well. So one-way relationships eventually hit a brick wall, which may be where you are today. And honestly, the healthcare system, if you're involved, complicates this because doctor care and medical care can also seem like a one-way street. Most doctors are limited. They've got 15 minutes for a doctor appointment. There's not a lot you can get done in 15 minutes. They many times don't have time to discuss a patient's health goals or what they value in life or their preferences. And there's not a lot of time to agree on like what's going to happen next. Mostly you or your parents or your grandparents go to the doctor. Doctor, here's my problems. Doctor says, okay, here's what I want you to do. And then you leave, right? So in between all of that, there's this idea of understanding what's going on. So when you talk to your parent about this, or when you think about this for yourself, you want to kind of bring this idea up before you kind of go forward with it, before you start digging in to do the work and make these changes. Because anytime there's a change in a caregiving situation, it brings up stress and the potential for conflict, right? So the first thing to do is to kind of gain an understanding of what the problems are according to each person. So if you don't have a pen and a paper, you might want to grab one right now because you can write these things down, or you can obviously come back and watch this video a second time and write them down. So here's a question to introduce this idea of resetting or intervening or changing a care situation that's just not working out for you. So to the person that you care for, if you're the caregiver, you seem to be having a lot of health issues. Where do you see all of this going in the next month or 6 months or 12 months? Are you going to be healthier? Is your health going to be worse? And how do you see my involvement in helping you? Now that's a big question. That is a thoughtful question to ask. So you're probably not going to get an answer. You're probably going to hear, well, I haven't thought about it very much, or I don't know, or how would I possibly have enough information to be able to answer that question? So your response would be, I understand it's probably a hard question to answer, but can you think about it? Because I'm going to do the same. And then we can get together, in a week or on a specific date or at a specific time. And you can tell me what you're thinking and I can tell you what I'm thinking. So when do you think you'll be ready? Let's just put a date on the calendar. All right. Because you want to get a next step kind of going. And in the meantime, for you as the caregiver, you have to think of the same thing, right? Where do you see your participation heading in the care for the person that you care for, especially if your goal is to spend less time on caregiving and more time on your own life, your career, spending time with your family, your friends, social activities, all of that. How can you manage this? What things might you want to do? What information might you need? What might you have to investigate? So this is not just caregiver taking care of a person, right? This is caregiver thinking what they need and the person who receives care thinking what they need and what they need to do, right? So it's a teamwork. It's like participation, which many people never think of when it comes to caregiving, right? It's all a one-way street. So number one in all of this is understand the problem from both perspectives. So on the caregiver side, again, this may mean you're spending way too much time in caregiving. You're experiencing mental distractions. You can't focus on your work. You don't have enough time with your spouse, your kids, your work life is failing. You're not making the career progress that you wanted to. And you had all these things that you wanted to do in life and you're doing none of them, right? Now, on your parents' side, because you're not them, it's really hard to imagine what they're going through. They could be going through a whole host of other things. They're worried about their health. They are worried about money to pay for care. Maybe your mom's worried about your dad. Just a number of issues, right? So for you as the caregiver, this means that you want to be able to take the time to understand their health problems, what they're going through, and identify potential solutions. They, on the other hand, must be interested and want to understand where you're coming from. So there has to be like equal give and take. So when you look at your parents and you're thinking about their health problems and you're thinking, well, God, what's going on and how do I fix it and all that kind of stuff, especially if you're just new to this or you're not very involved, or maybe you don't know anything about health and working with doctors and healthcare systems. So looking at the person you care for, simple questions. Do they get out of breath when walking up and down steps? Can they do everything in the house that they used to be able to do? Can they walk a mile? What is it that's causing this thing that they can't do or that they have trouble doing that requires your help? And as you look at that, ask the same questions of yourself, because if you can catch your health problems early, you will find yourself or not find yourself in the position that your parents are in, needing care, right? You as the caregiver want to stay independent as long as possible. Learn from these experiences of the person that you care for. So what's going on with your parents? If there's problems, what's the cause? Is it physical weakness? Is it something else? Because caring for a person who has health issues means that it's important to understand their diagnosis, high blood pressure, arthritis, COPD, bronchitis, cancer, breathing issues, dementia, right? Understand the health diagnosis, understand what medications they're taking, why they're taking the medications, and what kind of recommendations has the doctor given to manage all of these health concerns that the healthcare system likes to call chronic conditions or chronic diseases. So I'm going to throw in some healthcare terminology here to understand what the healthcare system thinks about and how they also look at this problem, because really it's you, the caregiver, the person that needs care, and then you're dealing with the healthcare system and insurance companies and all of that, right? So more complications. So identifying and understanding the problem from both sides is the first step to hitting that intervention button to reset things. Now, honestly, you might be surprised about how many people really don't know the impact of what this chronic disease, what high blood pressure means, what diabetes means, what COPD means, what kidney problems mean. They don't understand what this means today and in the long term, right? In 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. Because a lot of these health issues, believe it or not, start when people are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then they're either managed very well or they get a lot worse later in life, and that's when somebody needs care. So why does this happen? Well, it's because we don't know what we don't know, right? And if we haven't experienced caregiving or haven't worked with the healthcare system, it's difficult, right? And so it's important to get ahead of these issues. Now, working with the healthcare system is another thing, right? Because again, the doctors are rushed. And if your parent that you care for or you as the patient don't say, hey, doctor, I don't understand anything you're telling me. What is this high blood pressure thing? What does this mean? If you don't ask these questions, they don't know that you don't know, and they can't help you. So the idea in caregiving is everybody's helping everybody through all of this. Again, no more one-way streets, no more burnout, no more caregiver frustration, no more caregiver anger, no more caregiver health problems. Everybody's working together. So you have the conversation, mom and dad, what do you think is going to happen with your health? What do you expect? Here's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay. Then somewhere in the middle of there is conflict or this clash because your parents are thinking, well, I thought you'd take care of me. I thought you'd move across country. I thought you would do all this. And you're thinking, I'm not giving up my life for you. So we have to come up with a plan somewhere in the middle. So you have problems. Step number 2 is, what can you do to improve the situation on both sides? Now, this depends a lot on the willingness of the person with the problem, you, the caregiver, and the care receiver, to be open and willing to think about things differently, to have a bigger perspective, to have a longer term perspective, and to be willing to make changes in your life. So for the people who need care, the patients, right, as determined by the healthcare system, patients might need more exercise. They might need strength training. They might have to look at diet changes, giving up smoking or drinking or eating fast food and changing other habits that might be contributing and adding up and adding up and adding up to all of these healthcare problems and then causing more healthcare problems, because statistics show that if you have one chronic disease like heart disease, then it's easy to have diabetes come on top of that, or breathing issues come on top of that, or mobility issues to come on top of that, or dementia to come on top of that. And all of a sudden you have all these chronic diseases. So thinking about changing our habits is one part of improving health. Now, the other complication that many people face is the practical day-to-day issues of these habit changes. Now, the healthcare system likes to call these social determinants of health, and they abbreviate this as SDOH, Sam, David, over Harry, right? Another acronym. And this is becoming more popular because the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid that regulate health insurance for older people are paying more attention to this. So what this means is if a doctor prescribes a medication, right, can the patient afford the cost of the copay? Or has the doctor prescribed one of these new drugs that you see on the television commercials that cost $1,000 a month? And while it would be really great for your parents' condition, they can't afford it, right? Or if the doctor says, I want you to come back and see me in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or a month, and all your parent is thinking, my God, it's going to cost me $25. I don't have that money. Then they're not going to do it, right? So in all these situations, they have to get down to the root of the problem and the base issues, and to be honest about the base issues. Now, many patients are hesitant to tell the doctor, I can't afford this prescription. Coming to see you is more than I can afford. Unless you tell the doctors they can't help you. The staff in their office can help you. There may be workarounds to get lower cost prescriptions or change a prescription so that it's less expensive. If you're looking at changing a diet, you have to change the foods that you eat, right? Well, sometimes healthy foods can be more expensive. Again, something to tell the doctor, because all of this interest from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid are actually creating programs to address prescription copays and doctor copayments and people that have trouble paying for food or paying for their utilities to keep their house warm. All of these things are being connected to health because 80% of these problems are what contribute to the other bigger health problems. And nobody in the past has talked about these. So this idea of problem solving and being proactive about health, it can really be tricky because it can open up a whole can of worms that you never thought existed, right? People can have the desire and be willing to change habits, but they may not have the financial ability to do so. So that is another problem to solve. So again, going back, if this is the situation of your parent, make sure that you or they tell the doctor, tell the nurse in the doctor's office. See if there are options to find help and support to address these. Because if you don't tell your doctor that, hey, I'm willing to change, but I can't because of all these limitations, they can't find ways to help you. And so asking for help in all of this is, believe it or not, one of the solutions, admitting that you need help, that you cannot do it by yourself. So let's go back to if you're the caregiver. This can also mean researching outside sources of help, volunteer programs, grant programs with the local area agencies on aging, researching care agencies, paid caregiver costs, community living costs, Medicare, Medicaid, health insurance, all of this. You've got to be willing to seek and ask for help, just as the person that you care for has to be willing to do the same. Now, where do you get all this information? There's over 800 of my videos here. I have almost 200 podcasts that you can find the link on my website, or just Google the Caring Generation podcast. I have 3 free programs on my website about caring for aging parents, power of attorney, and guardianship. There are hundreds of articles. There's so much free information there. If you can't find what you're looking for there, you can always click on the Contact Me button on my website and schedule a personal consultation, but there's plenty of information there for you to help yourself. So in this pressing the reset button, do you see the similarities between what you want to be willing to do and what your parents want to be willing to do? Both people in a care situation have to be equally committed to open communication and being open-minded to change. If either side is not on board, there's going to be more conflict, and hitting the reset button is going to be a lot more difficult. So the idea is you want to come to a middle ground, come to a compromise, come to something that's workable. And for your aging parent, the other thing to think about is if they have a lot of health issues and they can't do things and they don't feel good, they may want to, but they may not be able to. So I have a lot of caregivers who come to me and they say, Pamela, my mom says she wants to get better. My dad says she wants to get better, but they're not doing a thing to help themselves. There is a point where when you just don't feel good, you can't make the effort. You're too tired. Your mind is saying, I want to do this, but I can't. I'd rather sleep in bed for 8 hours. Okay. Sometimes you have to accept that even though you'd like your loved one to do all these things, they're not going to be able to do it. Then you have a different problem and you come up with different solutions, right? So number 3 in this whole reset button intervention thing is you figured out your problems. You want to change. You've asked for help. You kind of have a plan. So let's say you've got 10 problems. Which one do you focus on first? If there are a lot of issues, you have to pick one. Pick the most important. Pick the one that your parent is committed to and that you are most committed to, and work on that. So to do that, you have to create what is called a behavior change plan or a habit change plan. So simple example, mom and dad need to improve their balance and their physical strength and their endurance. So they're going to work up to walking a mile every day. So create a little chart. I walked a block today. The next day I walked 2 blocks. I walked 3 blocks. I was tired today. I didn't walk. Keep going on that, right? Or if the idea is to stop eating fast foods, no more trips to fast food restaurants. Instead, you're going to eat this type of food, right? And you're going to make sure it's available in the house. So the thing with hitting the reset button is there has to be a plan to change, and there has to be a very specific plan to change with ways to measure that, right? Are my parents walking? If I'm the caregiver, how much research have I done this week on paid caregivers or on assisted living or on Medicare or on Medicaid, right? If you want to get from A to Z, there's a lot of letters in between, right? There's a lot of steps in between that you have to consistently do. Now, a lot of people fail at this because they want to do something, but they don't have a plan that's measurable and accountable. And honestly, look at all of us. This happens in a lot of areas of life. How many of us have these things we'd love to do and we never just get around to doing them? It's because we don't have a behavior change plan. We don't have something that says, I'm going to do this today, and on Saturday I'm going to do this, and next week I'm going to do this. We just don't plan. So think about, for you as the caregiver, what habits are you willing to change? What boundaries are you willing to set? Are you willing to say, Mom and Dad, I can't come over during the week anymore. The weeks are going to be for me and my family and my kids and my friends and all of that. Saturday, I'm all yours, right? So again, put a stake in the ground. What has to change? What are you willing to do, and how are you going to do that? So look at both of your behavior change plans and work together. So you can talk about this and say, well, gosh, Mom or Dad, I know you're going to try to change this. I'm going to try to change this. So we're both working on these behavior change plans, and it's going to be hard for both of us. I get it, but we can do this, because the goal is you want to preserve your relationship with your parents, right? You don't want to be angry at them or feel frustrated or so burned out that you just don't even want to deal with them or talk to them on the phone, right? Because that happens. So one final thought in this hitting the reset button intervention behavior change plan is to change the focus from the problem, right? Even though you need to identify the problems, if you keep focusing only on the problems, you're going to have more problems. So shift the focus from what is the matter here? What's going on? What's the problem that I don't understand? To what really matters here, right? I'm tired, I'm burned out, I'm exhausted. What really matters here is I want to be energetic. I want to be happy. I want to be nice to people. I want to enjoy my family and my job and my parents. So how do I do that, right? So you start focusing on what you want out of the situation instead of what you don't want out of the situation. Because a lot of people say, well, I just can't shift my mindset. I'm all worried about these problems and all this. To be able to accomplish this, you have to focus on what you want and forget about what you don't want. Put the negatives away, put the challenges away, because it is so easy to become mentally divided, right? As the caregiver or as the person who needs care, when you have all these problems and you're like, am I going to be happy today? Am I going to be negative today? Am I going to be positive today? And to come together somewhere in the middle to move to more of what you want. And so life really is about learning to work through these challenges, whether you're a caregiver or you have other things going on in your life, right? It's about learning to work with people. So as caregivers, the people that we care for, as the patient, the person who cares for us, learning to work with other people who have way different thoughts and ideas and values and beliefs and everything. So here's just a personal example, right? So for me, because of all this work I've done in healthcare and my personal family history and the death of my parents and all that, I place a really high value and a lot of time and attention on being healthy, on being active. Now, there are a lot of people who think I'm crazy because I find a way to exercise every day. I go to the gym. It's important for my mental health and my mood and all of that, right? Other people think I'm crazy. Now, Other people, though, might have different priorities that I think, well, wow, that's a strange priority. But that doesn't mean that we can't be friends, and that doesn't mean that we can't get along. We just have different ideas about our plan for ourselves, right? And that's okay, because my plan for me is different than your plan for you, or your parents' plan for themselves, right? That's part of life. We get out of our lives what we put in and what we focus on, right? And our minds focus on what we tell it to think about. So the results come from where we put our attention, that roadmap, that behavior change plan, the intervention plan, the hitting the reset button, right? So if you're that frustrated, angry, or burned out caregiver who only thinks about how angry and frustrated you are, that's all you're going to get. You got to think about the fact that you have a life ahead of you, and there's all these opportunities and wonderful things that can happen. And the more that you start putting your mind over there, the more of those opportunities you will begin to see. So it's not really until we think about things, make a plan, make the mental effort, and start practicing it, that our lives will begin to change, and that reset button is going to work. So today, this week, start to think about what you'd like to change. What are you willing to hit the reset button on and to investigate and begin changing your responses to a situation? Because hitting the reset button is possible. It's possible in caregiving. It's possible in all areas of our life. We just have to recognize that it's something that we want to do and make a plan to do it. I thank you so much for joining me for this video. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Please again, click below, follow my channel, like these videos, comment so that other people can find them. Go over to my website. The link to my website is below. So much free help and support there for you. Podcast, caregiver library, 800 videos here, free courses, all of that. If you still need help after that, you can schedule a personal consultation with me. I'll see you all again soon in another video. Have a great day.